What up, traders? What up, investors? Ken here from Dyslexic Investor, and thank you for tuning in for another fantastic video. I know the whole market's in turmoil. People are pulling their hair out. They're going insane. I promise you we're going to be doing a video on explaining what is going on and support levels today. We're also going to be live streaming tonight, so definitely stay tuned for that, and we can answer a smorgasbord of questions without a doubt. With that being said, we're just going to jump in right into things. We're going to be talking about Twitter. Yes, Twitter. Yes, if you look at everything that's going on in the world, most people's portfolio who are mostly mimicking the S&P 500 or NASDAQ or even the Russell, you're pretty much down today on a daily basis. Maybe not on an overall basis on the year, but you're pretty much going to be feeling the red today. And again, that bear came out once again. We talked about this a couple times, like the stocks sell off. It takes a little bit more to recover here. It's not a completely a V-shaped recovery here. But again, we're going to be discussing more of that tonight. In this particular video, we're going to be talking about Twitter. How in God's green earth is Twitter breaking to an all-time high and everything else in the overall market is down? It actually, it's quite a conundrum in my brain on just trying to figure out what in God's speed is going on here. So Twitter, they have an analyst day coming out today, this Thursday afternoon. Of course, they had earnings. They're talking about doubling their revenue by 2023 and laying out a plan on how they're going to be able to exceed 315 million users, daily active users, and monetize those folks. So that's going to be that's a lot. Again, so currently ending of the Q4 2020, they had 192 million, okay? Again, this company's been around for a long time, okay? And they have always had an issue, particularly on Twitter, on how to make money, how to monetize things, and so forth. So looking at the note of Twitter trying to monetize things, we'll hopefully find things more out on their demo day. And of course, they have quite a bit of time. Basically, with Twitter is aiming to add, again, that 315 million daily active users at the same time. And then talking about doubling its revenue from currently, again, the quarter that just recently closed, they had $3.7 billion in 2020. And they're trying to shoot for $7.5 billion in revenue by 2023. So yeah, it's going to be a very substantial double, but again, really want to see on how they're going to be able to monetize these users. Because again, going back to the same note of like, Twitter's been around for quite a few times, many years, and now they've figured out the secret formula of how to monetize things. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just kind of jump into the charts, look at some options activity, and just kind of dive through that. Again, overall market's down, coming back a little bit here. Now it's only down 2%, a little over 2% on the NASDAQ, with Twitter being up 7.5%. Okay, that sounds extremely hilarious to say that out loud and seeing it on the screen, basically breaking to an all-time high here. Very strong, kind of coming through this continuous momentum, showing signs of being a little bit overbought on the technical sides. I'm not saying this on the fundamental sides because the people always in the comment section is just little boo-hoo whiny babies. Looking here on the weekly side of Twitter, you're seeing this completely ramp up volume coming in here. Again, with that 21 EMA, that big thick yellow line here on the weekly chart has been support multiple times, really showing this very strong recovery since the low that we saw basically due to the virus of last year. So literally a year ago, this hit around $20 and now it's at $80. Like that's a pretty strong about face here. So looking here on a percentage return here, we're looking for basically 300% from the low. That's a lot. That's a huge return there. With that being said, I know I say that a lot. I'm going to actually get a t-shirt or coffee mugs and start selling those to you guys to buy. With Twitter looking at these levels here, where could we potentially see this target happening? So looking here on the even a greater chart, we're going to be zooming down into the monthly chart. Okay, so I'm an old man. And I actually traded Twitter when it first came publicly IPO, and I was a lemming, as they call it back in the day. If you ever played that game, and where I bought into Twitter at like $50, and I just like held it for quite some time. I think I held it for at least a year, until it broke a level where I just could not stand it anymore, and I got rid of it. It was actually right probably in this month here. I remember it broke like 40 some odd bucks, and I had to get out of it ASAP. Ever since then, it was a very steep downward move here into the early 2016. It hit a low of $13.73. So let's just do a little bit more accurate Fibonacci retracement on the monthly chart. So we normally don't do too much analytical stuff here on the channel, highlighting the monthly chart in particular. But we're seeing here that 74.73, which is the high of the, again, that was in that was in 2013, 2014, where it hit that high at $74.73. So what were you doing in 2013, 2014? I was trading. I was a moron, and I was holding Twitter at those high prices. But that is many years. We're talking, that's like 6-7 years ago, and now we're seeing it finally break that level. So really jumping into brand new territory on this scale here. If we're just strictly looking at the monthly chart, it is showing signs of somewhat being, even though the RSI is fairly strong here, that 76 to 80 range on the RSI tends to be somewhat of the overbought signal, meaning again a little bit overvalued, doing air quotes, on the technical basis. But at the same time, we have the Chaikin money flow just finally breaking out here. So if we go to this other chart here that I normally use, the my normal one here, but we just bring this to the weekly side, this as well has hitting a high level on the weekly chart. Again, the stock is just breaking out to an all-time high. They're releasing pretty good numbers from the earnings report and having a game plan to continue making more and more money than they ever had before. So that's all good news. And then we have this pandemic that really has crippled a lot of businesses, and somehow Twitter is going to figure out a way to monetize their user base that they've had for over a decade, and potentially trying to ramp up some kind of scheme, or some kind of sorry, it's not scheme, like a system to kind of churn out golden goose and eggs. So with that, the chart is just I still can't. You see my shoulders coming up. I'm just like, how? First of all, how did I miss this? I feel like a complete dodo brain on not seeing this come through. I have a good friend, Dave. He was all over this. He's a Twitter, and he gives a lot of flack to another buddy of mine of just of how we should have bought Twitter. Twitter's going to the moon, whatever. Like, it just kind of teasing us. But it's quite funny to see that it's actually panning out. Like that's an astronomical move higher here within the Twitter. So kind of putting it back to somewhat on the sense of the spectrum on Earth here, with again the volume coming up here, we do have volume to support it. But with the high levels of the volume zone oscillator and the RSI, the momentum slowly coming down here just a little bit. So in the early stages, I want to show you this on the 195-minute chart here. So we're starting to see this to kind of slowly kind of come off here. We saw that potential trying to break above that 74.73. Again, that was at level when we go way back to its IPO days. That was that all-time high that it hit on the second month of trading here. And you saw that kind of bang on the door there a couple times until it had the resistance to break through. If this wants to continue and continuing higher, the first level support is really going to be coming down to $74.73. If that does not hold, we're going to switch back to the daily chart here. Again, being a very aggressive momentum stock here, that 74.73 is going to be your first level support, because again, it initially was resistance, but now since it has broken past it, that resistance comes support to the downside. And with that note as well, it's $72 is kind of where the 8 EMA lies currently. That again could be support to the downside, but you know and love, I love that 21 EMA. So $66 to $65 is going to be somewhat where I need to look at to see where Twitter could come down to if once these levels were really much, if we do get a pullback in Twitter again. We're seeing the whole market down 4% at one point today, but Twitter's skyrocketing higher to well over 10% multiple times throughout the day. So it's kind of being somewhat of a honey badger. So a former mentor of mine has always talked about these honey badger stocks of just like, if you ever watched the YouTube video, honey badger just don't care. It's the same thing of just these outlying strong performing stocks that can just, it just doesn't care what's going on in the market. Oh, there's a thunderstorm over here. There's murder happening over there. Oh, there's inflation happening over here. Like all these terrible things. But the honey badger don't care. So it just continues just doing what it wants to do. And potentially at this point could be going higher. Again, I don't pretend to have a crystal ball or to look at price predictions. Looking at probabilities, using Fibonacci retracements, and just looking at, okay, the trend is pointing up. Is it likely to continue going up? Yeah, that's the path of least resistance, but we could have a pullback. Again, once these people want to take profits or whatever, there's could be a lot of stipulations behind that. Looking here in the options chains, there were some particular large orders going out, but then they were bought and sold multiple times, like 10,000 options for 75 calls for May, and then also the 85 calls, for March, 75 calls, and then the May 85 calls as well. So again, those May 85 calls is about $6 million here. And if you're going out here to the further call option side here, even all the way to like April, that's the first really monthly I would look at if you're just want to buy straight calls. I usually like to look 45 plus to 60 days out. And then looking at the money or in the money calls, you're seeing again, these calls are up 67, 73, 64% today. And we have the NASDAQ down 2.5%. So a very strange correlation. Again, I'm still flabbergasted in the sense of what we're seeing here happening in the market, of course, with a lot of growth, and then the yields going up to 1.57 or 1.6 or something, and people are just running and panic selling and just going completely apes, and just not really being. Is that basically what's the expression where it's called shooting first, ask questions kind of later? I'm more or less like let's not shoot people right away. Let's kind of wait here. But again, most people's portfolios are down today, so be very sad day for a lot of people. But without further ado, I want to thank you everyone for coming out and watching the video. If you have any comments or questions, please put it down in the description, and I'll try to get to it as soon as possible. And if you haven't already, join the Discord, link in the description, and a couple of affiliate links if you want to check those out as well. All right, guys, this is Ken from the Dyslexic Investor, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.